Hey folks, this is Kyle. Welcome to WP Roundtable episode 158. Today, my awesome guest is Daniel Bachhuber of Handbuilt. How you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about yourself?
Pretty great. I wanted to have you on the show and talk to you about all the cool things you do for the longest time now, and it's quite a treat to have you joining me in the middle of this Monday afternoon. So thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, Daniel has done a lot of cool things in WordPress. Has been an open source developer and advocate for a real long time. His name is attached to a lot of pretty cool, well-known projects. And I'm excited to dive into all of those. Before we do, let's touch on our quick picks of the week real fast. My quick pick, I've recently been messing around a lot with the latest release for the Easy Digital Downloads MailChimp extension, and it's pretty awesome. I have it running on another site that I help operate, and it has opened up enormous possibilities. And I work for the Easy Digital Downloads team. I wasn't too involved in the development of this particular extension, but the 3.0 version was in production for the better part of a year. And when it finally came out, it kind of like reinvented this entire plugin. It also made multiple other extensions a little bit obsolete and had so much cool functionality. So now
So what does it do though?
it's,
MailChimp, EDD, okay, I get the connection, bridge, but
yeah,
what is it, what does it do on this site?
sure. Yeah, formerly it was primarily just incorporating a subscription action into the checkout form. So get your customers to subscribe to your lists. So now it takes full advantage of the e-commerce functionality in MailChimp. So all of the store and orders data is sent to MailChimp. And you now have the ability to do pretty cool things with MailChimp, like automate cart recovery or send your email receipts through MailChimp using MailChimp templates and reporting and all of that instead of through your store system, or taking advantage of all their many e-commerce related automations, setting conditions based on customer value or rewarding customers at thresholds, or upselling relevant products to other customers, and all kinds of fun stuff based on the order data that you have stored with their customer profile. So it's just it's gotten to be pretty rich in data and features all of a sudden, and I'm having fun playing with that. So,
Cool.
yeah. What have you got to share, Daniel?
I got two recommendations just because I'm that guy. The
Okay.
first is called Hunter. It's hunter.io, and it's a service that allows you to find an email address on any domain. So if you're kind of doing some prospecting and trying to figure out how to contact someone, they have a Chrome extension. Just click the button, and if it's got the email address in the database, it'll show you the email address. The other one
Wow.
is called public www, or rather public www.com. And this lets you, it's kind of same type of business, intelligence research tool. It allows you to put in a little string into the search box, and then they have a database of source code of lots of different websites. And it'll show you which websites match that little snippet. So if you want to find, all, websites running competitors, whatever, easy way to do that. Both, I'm relatively new to like the doing business side of things. So while these may be common knowledge to, a lot of existing business owners, to me, they were total eye openers, because I would, literally, well, for public www, I didn't have really an alternative, so the first time I saw that, I was like, whoa, that's cool. And for Hunter, I, go to the contact page, or, try to like find some other profile for the person online and see if they had their email address listed there. So both
Wow.
really helpful tools, and their free versions are actually very helpful. So you probably won't be paying for anything until you start using it heavily.
Wow, that's great. Those do sound like truly useful tools, and I have not heard of either of them.
Yeah, there you go. Quick tips.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's what this segment is all about. Okay. Daniel, let's learn a little bit about you. I want to help anybody out who is tuning in now or in the future who hasn't been, you know, caught up on your story and the role that you play. Let's start a little bit with some background here. And if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about what your original career aspirations were when a young Daniel had some ambition and said, you know, this is what I want to do with my life. You know, what is it that you wanted to do? And what were the first steps you took to put yourself on the right path?
Sure. So I've always wanted to be a pilot, and pretty far from doing that right now, although I'm actually 50 hours towards my private pilot's license.
Wow.
It's a very expensive hobby, though, if you aren't pursuing it professionally. And if you're pursuing it professionally, it's not a very lucrative career. You start very low on the pay scale, and your hours are awful. You're gone, you know, 4 nights of the week, sort of thing.
Oh, that's
My
interesting.
background's really media and technology, publishing. And that genesis is I was a photographer for a while. I guess I still am. You never are not a photographer. I wanted to be a photojournalist, though. So my freshman year of college, I applied to 6 unpaid photo internships. Didn't hear back from a single one. One paid web production internship, and I got that. And so at that point, it was pretty obvious to me where the career was and where the career was not. And from there, I've just kind of worked at the intersection of media and technology for quite a while. I worked for WordPress.com VIP for a couple of years. I was a code wrangler, support engineer. I worked for Human Made, another enterprise WordPress agency. It's a VIP partner. I worked for Fusion. It's kind of initially at the time, it was a joint venture between ABC and Univision. And then most recently, Univision bought the assets of Gawker Media Corporation. So if you follow media at all, Gawker.com, there was a big old public lawsuit. The company went bankrupt. Univision bought those assets on auction. And Fusion now exists as Gawker reincarnated. So
Oh, okay.
it's pretty wonky, you know, it's pretty inside baseball, but that's kind of the space that I've been operating, you know, professionally. And then open source wise, kind of all relates to that in some way. So I got involved with WP-CLI while I was working at WordPress.com VIP and started out as a contributor. And then the maintainer Scribu stepped down. And he said, "Hey, do you want to be a maintainer?" I was like, "Sure," having no idea what it actually meant to maintain an open source project. I mean, like I had plugins up until that point, but I didn't really know they were like relatively inconsequential plugins in comparison. And then I got involved with the REST API project. Oh yeah, the genesis of that is I was at WordCamp New York, and Nason asked me to get involved because I had I guess it was because of my WP-CLI background. The REST API, kind of what it represents is the design of a REST architecture on top of WordPress's core fundamentals. So like, you know, password protected posts is like a, you know, fundamental feature to WordPress. How do we recreate that in the REST API? Well, the idiosyncrasy about password protected posts prior to the REST API, and I even can't remember off the top of my head what the REST API implementation ended up being, is it's all based off of one cookie. So you get the form in the page, and you enter your password, and then that password is stored in a cookie. So when you go to the next page, that is also password protected. If it's the same password, you'll just have access because the password is stored in a cookie. And if it's a different password, then you'll enter that new password and it will overwrite the existing cookie and set the new cookie with the new password. So really, you know, when you look at a project like the REST API, the significant challenge associated was, okay, WordPress is this, 15-year-old pile of arbitrary, technical design decisions that we now have to develop a rationale for and, design a REST API on top of. So, the Gutenberg project, in fact, is experiencing many of those same pains right now.
Yeah.
Like, how do we take, this random thing that was added, 10 years ago and figure out how to fit it into this new paradigm of what we want?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's kind of,
overwhelming problem, it seems like. Yeah, some of those are really big and complicated.
yeah.
So you've been contributing for quite a while. That's something that is kind of special. And you know, there's thousands of people who contribute to open source stuff, but it does strike me as, you know, just something you can reflect on. What is it that makes some of us feel compelled to contribute and others not? You weren't the only person using WP CLI or the REST API or WordPress for that matter. What is
Mhm.
it that makes like a person like yourself actually contribute, and the dozens or hundreds or thousands of other people interacting with the software like think, no thanks, I don't.
Sure, right. That's a great question. For me, like it kind of boils down to two things. One, WPSI specifically. At the time, WordPress.com VIP team had a bunch of WPCLI-esque scripts, except they were all random one-off implementations that worked in different ways. And we used them on a daily basis. So it was one of those things where it just bugged me to no end that they were all slightly different in their own ways.
Mhm.
And I sought to standardize them. And I ended up contributing a lot of existing code from the WordPress.com code base into WP CLI in this effort to standardize, usage of different things. That's kind of one thing. The other thing for me is, this is me living in my shed quarters, or working in my shed quarters rather. I live Tualatin, Oregon. It's outside of Portland, and I've always opted for life over work. In my line of work, if I wanted to advance my career significantly, I'd be in New York, DC, San Francisco, that sort of thing. But I live in Tualatin because I was born and raised in Tualatin. I got two small kids, and that's the life that I want to live. And the draw for me for open source is I get to participate on this global scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is just inaccessible in my local market. Tualatin's not known for its actually there are some global enterprises, surprisingly enough, in Tualatin,
Yeah.
but it's not really known for that New York and DC is. So that to me has been one of the most rewarding aspects to my career, is I get to collaborate with people all over the freaking world at all hours of the day, anytime I want. And it's just, as long as you keep it in balance and keep it healthy, it's a really enriching experience.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's totally something for us to appreciate, not take for granted. This, how much of like an equalizer this, I mean, the internet and our open source communities are. It's amazing that I can participate at. And I come from a very small town in nowhere, relatively speaking, and I feel very well connected and integrated into this huge community. And many of my other colleagues are like that. My founder of the company I work for, Pippin Williamson, as well, lives in a small town in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And in his entire town, he doesn't know a single person who even uses WordPress, let alone have a community, which I feel privileged to have here in this town.
Right.
And it seems so striking when you really think about it, how any of us are able to not just get by, but thrive in this ecosystem, in spite of our geographic limitations.
Do you know, is the town that he's living in now the town that he was raised in, or is it?
Yes, Hutchinson.
Okay, but he doesn't. I guess he doesn't have a technical community there. Is that what you're saying?
No, there's virtually nothing.
Oh yeah,
nothing significant really that he takes advantage of.
So I actually, in the last year, I joined the local chamber of commerce, which is always kind of a hoot for me.
I can only imagine.
Real people in the real world, right?
Right.
And there's people that sell web marketing services and WordPress websites, and it's like, oh, that's so quaint.
Yeah.
Not it's just it's my world is so far distanced from local commerce that it's humbling, and it's very eye-opening, just because it's so different than what I do. I I've had one Portland area client, I think, in the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were kind of like exposing yourself to your local business scene, doing your consulting work and
less that, more, I view my relationship to Tualatin like 30-year investment of time and energy. What can I do to make Tualatin better than what it is today?
Right.
And so it's more so just getting a lay of land, what the scene's like, that sort of thing.
Very cool.
Yeah. I also started a local meetup group. So Portland has a bit of a tech hub, but the traffic has become such a nightmare that you wouldn't want to, no person in their right mind wants to drive down there in the evening even. And so I created a Southwest Portland tech meetup. And we had our first meetup last month. It was just an afternoon coffee shop, hang out and chat. And I didn't realize it at the time. I set the time as 2 to 4 p.m. because I didn't want, like, I have 2 young kids. I have my work day and then I'm done with work. I don't want to do anything in the evening. And I didn't realize at the time or prior, but at the time it became obvious to me that kind of self-selected to the type of people that could attend such an event from 2 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And it was the coolest thing. It was all these serial entrepreneurs, like some guy, former Intuit director of engineering that's retired to the township, a couple over. And it was actually really, really cool. So, we're kind of figuring out how we want to take that meetup group forward. But
wow. So you've had one meeting so far?
Yeah. All that to say is there could be people in your local area that have some, you could have some professional relationship with, and maybe you just don't know yet.
That's a good lesson.
Or they'd be excited to learn from you too. I think in our local area, there seems to be, we have light industrial. So there's less software and more like hardware hacking going on.
Okay.
But there's like workshops on like how to program. Yeah, so we just got a circular from the library. The library is hosting a workshop for 3rd to 5th graders on writing code for your Arduino. Wow. Which is like, what? That's cool. I want to go to that. Can I go to that? And I've been volunteering too at the middle school just once a month, and they've got a material sciences lab where they have some of the kind of tools and technology that you 3D printers and related technology and that sort of thing. And my wife said, one time when I came home, she's like, maybe you should, re-enroll in middle school so you can attend those classes. It's like, can I do that?
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's pretty savvy stuff. That's
well, it's fun. Cool. I think it's there if you look around for it. And it's easy to get in this kind of like very myopic, like, only looking forward, tunnel vision state of mind. And one of the things I value most is exploration and kind of just being thrown in entirely new contexts and just, kind of exploring, looking at what's going on in that sort of thing. Sorry, we're off topic, aren't we?
No, that's fine. I like that part of the show. Our local library does things like that sometimes too. I just hosted a WordPress meetup the other day. We have a couple per month, and somebody, a fairly new member of our meetup group, said they went to a library organized program recently, and the topic I think was security online or staying secure using the web or something to that effect. And this meetup member has been learning stuff from our meetup and asked the question, like, I heard about 2-factor authentication. How can I take advantage of that to be more secure? And the presenter had never even heard of.
Oh, really? Hey, opportunity for you to step up and say, hey, I know all about this. Let me tell you how it works.
Yeah.
I've actually been wanting to teach like a web literacy class just because I think a lot of people would benefit from it.
Oh, and no doubt.
2-factor authentication would be a great topic. Not using 1Password would be another one. Another one is really the genesis of it for me was how social networks are basically designed to be giant manipulation tools these days. And so, to have cognizance of that when you're using Facebook and there's a little notification icon, they employ PhD psychologists so that they optimize your reaction to that notification icon. Just keep in mind, keep that in mind as you're using these services.
That's a really good idea. Yeah.
We should do it. Actually,
yeah.
you know what we should do? We should co-develop the curriculum, and we can each teach in our respective location.
That is a pretty good idea, and I bet that. Well, I'm absolutely 100% confident that there would be a warm reception to that. Years ago, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, or I used to teach those classes when I worked at the library, and I didn't know very much, but was still the most knowledgeable, and taking computers and going to places around town and teaching programs about how to use Excel and how to use email, and having groups of senior citizens come in and tell me how they thought people should write letters instead because email's too impersonal. But
but this actually relates to open source, as a matter of fact, because ultimately what I think it comes down to, and why I remain involved in open source, is all about impact, right? And open source is an easy stage to have a ton of impact. You and I can write some code and bring down lots of WordPress websites in one fell swoop, right? And that too is one of the appeals of working in open source. But I think it's also truth to be known, because you can find that impact elsewhere too. In doing, it's like, well, why, I'm a software engineer, why waste my time teaching computer literacy classes at the local college or library or whatever. It's like, well, because you can have a lot of impact. A little bit of investment of your time can go a long way. And you know what? It's like, okay, so why don't they just like sign into the computer and look it up themselves? Like, a lot of people, we are the ones that are capable of doing that. A lot of people aren't really, wholly capable of doing that.
Yeah. It's funny to think about it a little bit more in those terms, just about the impact. And but it's totally true that you can we can do a lot. We really, really can. There's a lot of lives that can be touched, and a big difference that can be made just through just the software that we're influencing. And
and I think it's worth like doubling down on your focus on that, because frankly, I think over time releasing software gets boring. It's possible to get really, really bored with writing software. And part of the challenge, I think, is that you get disconnected from the world that surrounds you. So you think you're just like in a box, grinding out the next release, Like, why does it even matter? You lose a lot of the energy and excitement around your craft. Your craft really is problem solving. And ideally, you're solving problems in the real world, not, the forever challenge for every engineer is don't just solve problems that you think of, that you create in your own mind. That's called over optimization. It's a bad thing. It's like, you always ask, is this a problem that's actually worth solving?
Right.
That's like the biggest lesson, so I've had several failed attempts now at starting my own businessy thing. And a lot of it too, I really have a lot of respect for Pippin, because I wouldn't have been able to go through his like how much hard work he's had to do to build up his business, in the sense that he's had a lot of years where it was very, very difficult. And, now he's got something to show for it. But at every point along the way, hey. Oh, it's in the center console. Sorry. That's one of what happens when you work at home. Every point along the way, it's been really difficult, and there's no guarantee of success. And he could have just said, I'm going to bail and go get a job or something,
Sure.
So, so I've had like several failed attempts that I think in hindsight were lack of market fit, meaning I was just inventing problems to solve and then solving them and then wondering why no one wanted to buy my solution to this hypothetical problem,
Yeah.
There's something to be said about getting out in the real world, understanding where the real problems are that other people have. Most important thing, other people have this problem. If
Yeah.
only you have this problem, then you have a market of one, and you're gonna have to do some really fancy accounting if you want to make your business profitable.
Hearing you say the word failed is surprising and in a way impressive, I think.
How so?
And I would maybe ask you to unpack it a little bit and look back on those
Okay,
efforts that you
learning
made.
experiences.
Experiments, perhaps.
Right.
I've experienced firsthand and secondhand hesitation, or maybe and a difference to using that, expressing it that way, like it was a failure, a business venture maybe that didn't really work out, and for some reason or another, a different direction was eventually pursued, and
Sure.
it ended prematurely, maybe before it really had the opportunity to flourish. I mean, I've walked away from business ventures too, and most of the time I don't look back and say, there's only a couple that I would look back and classify as a failure, but for the most part, they were good learning
So they were wildly profitable?
Wildly profitable. Okay, so see, that's what I'm getting at. Like,
right.
your criteria here. How do you classify things in retrospect? And are you just like totally at peace with that? Because a lot of people would wrestle with that and say, no, it wasn't really a failure. I was just I didn't have its time, and then this opportunity came along, and I did something different instead before it blossomed.
So the definition of a business is a profitable enterprise, right? So that's kind of important key qualifier to me. So even most recently, I sold a plugin called Bylines to the folks at Publish Press.
Right.
This was a failure on my part. And it was a failure because, the plugin's fine and, did what it needed to do. But it was a failure. It failed to become any real line of business for me. And what ended up happening is I was just demotivated to work on it, and then eventually found an acquirer for it because I felt bad that my customers, I wasn't pushing updates or anything like that. And the challenge there, so Bylines was, assign multiple authors to a post in WordPress. It's like a feature more than a product.
Yeah.
1. 2, I think for a WordPress plugin to be successful, it needs to align closely with the business of its customer. So EDD, right? Like the whole, selling digital content aligns very closely to the business process of the customer. The customer needs to sell digital content online. That's your audience, target market audience pool, that sort of thing. Bylines was more of like a feature that some publishers needed or may have needed. It wasn't like a key functional component to their website. And even then, I think that the premium plugin business is quite difficult. So I didn't, I'd even built it because last year at Pressnomics, Brad Tunard was just like, you should do it just to try it. And I was like, okay, sure. And then who would guess? It didn't go anywhere. Prior to that, I did premium WP CLI plugins.
Right.
Or packages with this business called Run Command. And, easiest way to chalk up that failure was really what it came down to is it wasn't a profitable venture to start with. So the time that I was, my time is zero sum, and then time that I was investing into it was taken away from WP CLI, like the time that I was contributing to WP CLI. And like the business too of licensing selling open source software is very, very dicey. It's not a clear proposition. The most successful selling open source software businesses either are SaaS, where so it's like WordPress.com is a SaaSification of WordPress, in the sense that WordPress.com has a defensible business because they have just gone massive, massive, massive scale. And it's very hard for anyone to compete with them at that level. And so scale yields, cost performance and, defensible margin. The other way to truly sell open source is dual license, where the open source version is like AGPL and essentially trialware. And then as soon as you decide you want to use it for commercial use, there's a commercial license to buy. So WP CLI kind of had that monetization challenge, and what I was trying to do is monetize it similarly to premium plugins, but the market wasn't big enough, and it would have been a long, slow grind.
Sure.
Another business venture that I failed is called Toothpress. And if you go to toothpress.com, the SSL cert is invalid because I never bothered to fix it. Like once it broke, I kept the site up, but I consolidated hosting to reduce costs, and I never fixed the SSL cert. And essentially, it was dentist websites as a service. And Brian Cogsgard has talked about his forever dream to have political websites as a service, and like the market is endless for website as a service type of startups.
Yeah.
And the challenge, as I think of it, is like 10% technology, 90% marketing. Right. So in order for the business to because there's dozens of agencies you can use or platform services you can use if you're a dentist to build yourself a website. So you've got to figure out what your marketing take is to differentiate from all of that competition. And I had a business partner in Toothpress, and that relationship went south. And then at that point, it was like, yeah, business isn't really going anywhere, because the technology aspect, the 10%, that was mine, but I don't know anything about marketing. I know some, but I'm not a pro, and I don't want to invest a whole bunch of time and energy into doing marketing activities. Sure. So I didn't really want to carry the torch for him.
It would surprise me if you didn't feel this way, but are there, when you reflect on some of these past ventures, projects that you took on, some which you actually did go the distance of trying to turn into a lucrative business, are there any that you look back and just like, oh man, if I'd only had a little more time to put into that one, it could have been, but it just didn't work out. I'm bummed.
No.
You're just totally at peace with all of those experiments.
They are experiments. So I think that the way that I've mentally approached it is you have to be upfront with how much risk you're willing to take in the experiment, and to mitigate the amount of risk that you are, or risk that you're exposing yourself to. And so all of these experiments, they were time bound for me. It wasn't like all in, like I'm getting a second mortgage on my home and putting that money in, and like come hell or high water, it's going to happen. They were all experiments that I wanted to see if they had any traction, more so in learning experiences for me, but I was limiting my total amount of time and energy I'd invest into it.
Is this just like your style to be very rational and serious about this? Like, here's my criteria for success, and that don't work out, I move on to the next thing. Where many other people do take I'm going all in, gambling everything, rolling the dice.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people, and many succeed and many go bankrupt.
No, most don't succeed.
Most do not succeed. So that's unquestionable.
Is what's called survivorship bias. AKA you only hear the stories from the successful people, which gives you this perspective that, oh, most people must be successful. No, it's just you're hearing the stories from, 1% or 5% that are successful.
And even then, even those people that you talk to are probably going to tell you, no, you should have been here for the 5 failures that I had before this, where
sure.
I did lose my house and my first marriage and all
Right.
my money and my credibility and everything.
Right. No, but, and we joke, but seriously, like that is a factor in my mind of, my decision making has always prioritized life over work, meaning I work, 35 to 45, sometimes 50 hours in a week. And that's a comfortable investment of time and energy for me. I'm done, every day by 5, laptops closed for the evening, don't work on the weekend sort of thing. And so in startup ventures too, that is my time constraint. I'm not one of those people that's going to be like, oh, 80, 90 hours a week, because that's going to negatively impact everything else I have going on in my life. And sure, it may limit me in the opportunities that are presented. I'm not going to go start a VC backed company and go all in and, become $100 million company, because why? Like, even going back to the very beginning, it kind of assumes that that's something that you're interested in. It's like, I don't want to do that. I just want to do what I'm interested in and have fun in life. And I ran this morning and sunny outside and that sort of thing. So,
Wow. Yeah, that's fun. I like that. That attitude that you have. And it surprises me how uncommon I think it is. At least in the circles that I've been in, with the guests that I've had and the friends I have and the entrepreneur circles that I have floated in for a long time, that it's an attitude and a mentality that I encounter so rarely.
well, yeah. And I think, too, it can reflect personality. So, entrepreneurship is at its core a risk-taking venture. It's for the thrill seekers. Very conservative people aren't, entrepreneurs because they're not willing to take on the risk. But the same type of personality, could easily become addicted to alcohol, drug, substance abuse, that sort of thing. Kind of, riskier behavior through and through. So I think that, that could be part of it too. Not to necessarily judge those, but as a way of describing, kind of why that behavior or those types of behaviors can be celebrated. And I do believe in taking risk. Like, I think you should take as much risk as you can whenever you can, but make sure to protect your downside, right? Like, don't take the risks where you're gonna lose everything. 'Cause, it's just like gambling, right?
Yeah.
You don't gamble where you have like a limitless bottom, right? And then when you are gambling, make sure that you have the informational advantage over your counterpart. If you have the informational advantage, then that increases your odds. If you don't, then you're probably playing against someone that's going to beat you. So the same thing applies to businesses and markets too, right? Make sure that you have the informational advantage in that market so that you can, eke out all of your competitors.
Yeah. And we certainly are, maybe it's a societal issue where we glorify the risk taker, and it is, I mean, the classic, Shark Tank story, we cashed out our retirement, we mortgaged the house, and we put everything into this business.
Don't do that.
And no, that is like the pinnacle here.
Right.
That is praised. That is like the message that we're sent, that it's what it takes. You do what it takes to make your business, whatever it is, good idea or not. You do whatever it takes to win, and that's probably a harmful message to be sending so consistently.
Yep. So don't listen to the schmucks on TV. Yeah. I think too, it's important to recognize that venture capital as an industry is a business for the limited partners. those investing the money. It's not a business for the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs are the product. So the way that a venture capital, VC portfolio fund is financially viable is if one company of those 10 or 20 hits the grand slam, billion-dollar unicorn, they take the entire fund. So the design of the model is, like aggressively find companies that have the potential to be the billion-dollar grand slam, which means that 90 to 95% of the companies that are raising money in any given portfolio, the venture capitalist basically wants to kill them as soon as they don't prove themselves to be that grand slam unicorn. Which means an entrepreneur, risking 5 years of their life, 10 years of their life, marriage, so on and so forth, equity in their home, whatever, in their business venture. It's like, I'm not necessarily on board with that anymore, because the entrepreneur holds a lot more risk in the equation than the limited partners do and the venture capitalists do. And obviously they have, hopefully, if they've done things correctly, they have more equity, which means that they have more potential upside. And at the same time, just the statistics of the model are that those who get lucky are the ones that get lucky, and most everyone doesn't get lucky.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So.
Fun topics. I think there's some other things that would be fun to touch on while I've got you.
You mean not everything in the whole world?
Yeah. Like this stuff fascinates me. It really does. Sure. But there's a couple other things going on these days, and I want to touch on it real quick. So maybe briefly, you want to give a status update on what's the state of WordPress CLI right now, and what's the immediate future kind of look like?
Sure. So what happened in December is I stepped down as a maintainer. For all of 2017, I had a guy by the name of Elaine working with me as co-maintainer, and he stepped up as the kind of principal maintainer right now. And project's going fine, which is like frankly the most awesome thing that I could have ever hoped for, because a year prior, so just 14 months ago or so, it was like just me, like bus factor, and I was terrified because anything happened to me, there was no capacity to keep the project moving forward and that sort of thing. So we just released 1.5.0. 2.0.0 is coming up at some point in the next few 6 months or something like that. And in the most recent release, a couple principal new features. One is checksum verification for WordPress.org plugins. So you can easily see whether any of the WordPress plugins installed on a site have been modified. It's useful for security scans, or you've inherited a client site and you want to see if they've made any modifications to the plugins, that sort of thing. And another is programmatic editing of WP config. So you can add constants or change the values of existing constants at the command line. So if you want to do some programmatic modification of WP config, however that might suit your workflow, you can do that.
Yeah, those are some cool new features.
Yeah.
So what is you said 2.0 is
2.0.0 on the horizon.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Anything particularly excited about?
Well, it's more of like a Semver thing. So we'll be dropping support for PHP 5.3, and I don't know if we'll be increasing minimum support to 5.4 or 5.6. Okay. Well, either be 5.4 or 5.6, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big step for a project this large.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's also kind of necessitated. Travis CI is dropping support for 5.3 because Travis CI is dropping support for the Ubuntu distribution that supports PHP 5.3. So, but it's kind of like, why you shouldn't be running PHP 5.3 at this point. Anyway, so please don't.
Yeah. Yep. Right on.
So in my vision for, actually, even taking a step back, great opportunity for anyone in the audience to get involved with WP CLI project. We try to grant commit bit access to those who are very regularly involved in contributing, taking kind of a more liberal commit access approach, and we're looking for a half dozen people to kind of be more involved on a regular basis with the project. So if anything has been limiting you to date, don't consider a limitation anymore, and please dive in. And really, my goal for the project is, because it's kind of a key infrastructure tool for so many people, it should just continue to exist and continue to keep working indefinitely. And how I think about things is like 5 to 10 year time horizon. Really what I'm optimizing for is stability, product quality on a 5 to 10 year time horizon, not necessarily like trying to crank out any particular feature, by next month or 3 months from now.
Well, that sounds like a good strategy. One of the other things that has been going on a little bit, and you mentioned earlier, is the Gutenberg project. It's kind of late stage in the process right now. It's been what we know now. It's been one of the longest running feature projects pre-merge for WordPress. Maybe it has been the longest at this point, possibly. I don't know for sure. And it's special in a variety of ways, not special in some others. It's definitely the #1 topic everybody is talking about. And you've got a special perspective on it. You've actually been like involved in the project to some degree. Is that right?
Yeah. So what I've been working on is trying to produce a database of plugin compatibility with Gutenberg. So when you think about WordPress 5.0 being released, the ideal end user experience is that every WordPress user, or the majority of WordPress users, can use Gutenberg on day one, right? Like technically are able to.
Yes.
Also ideally they're excited to, but at the very least they should technically be able to. So the greatest kind of vector for them not being technically able to is plugins. Any WordPress site has half dozen, couple dozen, hundreds of active plugins, right? And in fact, the number of plugins that they have, greatly correlates the likelihood of them being able to use Gutenberg, because any one of them that doesn't work with Gutenberg means the whole site doesn't work with Gutenberg.
Right.
So we've been working on a database to kind of track which plugins are compatible and which aren't with Gutenberg, where compatibility is largely defined as the user can perform the same functional task within Gutenberg, even if it's different UI or whatever. And the database. What?
How are you collecting that data?
So built a database, and we are. I'm doing the work on behalf of DreamHost, and I want to get WP Engine involved too, and some other partners. And so right now I'm just doing that whole coordination dance of trying to get more people than just me working on the project. We've got it roughly built, and then. What we're going to do is try to use support teams at the different hosting companies to do a lot of the testing. And we have this system in place that you'll be able to like one-click launch a new sandbox environment with the plugin that you're testing active, Gutenberg active, quickly test and report your results. We're kind of trying to optimize for, any one of these people being able to do as many tests as they can in an hour or 2 hours, whatever time they have available.
Wow. Okay.
And then once we have that data, we'll have a much better sense of what the true numbers are in terms of statistical likelihood that any given WordPress user, can technically use Gutenberg on day one. And I hope that data can then inform the decision-making process around how Gutenberg is included in core, but also really help the hosts in providing proactive, customer outreach, helping make sure that their WordPress users aren't caught unaware by the release of Gutenberg.
Wow. So we don't have any data yet, but that's something you're looking
But
to
the
collect.
system is in place. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like extremely valuable information.
Yeah, I think it kind of, taking a little bit of a diagonal step to urban development. At any point there's, controversy, two opposing parties like, I hate you, no, I hate you, arguing sort of thing. I find that it's very, very constructive to take a step back and find common ground. And in this case, Gutenberg, rolling out Gutenberg, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. No, it's not going to be the end of the world, that sort of thing. It's like, okay, let's take a step back and let's work together on a decision-making strategy for determining whether or not it's the end of the world. So then you're less focused on like what the outcome could be hypothetically, and more on, here are all the steps that we can control for in, helping to produce the best possible outcome. Because always, in all cases, people want the best possible outcome, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This sounds like a perfect recipe for that.
Well, hopefully. I mean, it's all theory. Do as I say, not as I do, right?
Right.
As with anything I say.
Right.
If I seem like a hypocrite, I am a hypocrite. Just do as I say, not as I do.
This project has been going on for so long and has been so talked about. I've got to believe that we are going to find some encouraging data that shows that the ecosystem is, catching up a little bit and adapting and compatible, and it
I
won't be
have
the end of
no
the world.
idea,
I'm
actually.
hopeful, right?
I have no
Right?
idea. I'm very interested to see the data because I literally do not know. And I think it's like, yeah, you can guess, but no, like you should just wait till you have the data and then look at the data, because often I find in cases like this, the data is actually surprising. You start looking at the data and you think, oh, this is actually kind of interesting. So one of the things that this database, I hope it to categorize, is the type of incompatibilities that we have, so that we understand, okay, so if we put our efforts into remediation steps, like we could add this backwards compatibility shim here, that sort of thing, then we actually know what sort of benefit we get from that, from that effort, or adding that kind of extra code baggage, that sort of thing. But to the project itself, Matthias published a issue the other day that kind of had a breakdown of, what was defined as MVP. And so that's kind of a useful reference point. And there's, from my understanding, I'm not involved in the core kind of day-to-day development right now. My understanding is that they're trying to get to feature complete, where all of the principal features for Gutenberg the editor are finished and can be final, and APIs can be finalized. And then the next step is to work towards merge proposal. And merge proposal needs to, one, address at least some of the kind of infinitely growing bug backlog that's happening right now, but also talk a bit more about, here's the impact that we can expect it to have. This is going to be the total process, that sort of thing.
Right. Wow. Okay. So we are probably months away at this point, more than a year in.
Or 2 weeks, It could just happen.
Yeah. What fun that would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah. YOLO.
Yeah.
Especially
Right.
if it landed on a Friday and then everyone just like, peace.
I wish like I could, if I could have a time machine that would to just like watch that play out and then go back and not do it probably.
Oh, it's kind of funny. So I was, really involved with the REST API project, and there was like this classic moment when we were pushing for REST API inclusion in core, and Matt says, no, it needs to have feature parity with everything in WordPress. And I'm like, and there's this like Slack exchange where I'm like, even the file editor? And he's like, yeah, the file editor. And the hilarious thing is, at the time I was like, you are the craziest person I've ever interacted with. Like, don't you realize we've spent so much, so and so. And then it's like, oh, now I get it. And yeah, the REST API does need to have feature parity, and yeah, I get where Matt was coming from. So it's kind of funny how hindsight can actually completely reverse your opinion on the matter. I think it's also very helpful to distance your own kind of emotional attachment to open source projects from, what is the agenda of the project? The project, unless you're running the project, the project probably exists for some reason other than your own, right? I'm sure you have this experience with EDD customers. They're like, why didn't you add that feature that I really needed? And it's like,
of course.
Or dude, come on. It's like, that's your priority, not our priority. Our priority is this, right? But then they're like, but it's open source. That means like my priority matters too. And it's like, no, stop thinking that way. Quit attaching yourself to like everything on the internet just because it's open source. So yeah, so distance in both directions, I think, is very, very helpful.
I think you're right. And I think in the interest of time and knowing you've got another important meeting to get to, I'm going to forego all my other
taxes, yo.
It's that time of year, and they're oh so fun, especially for someone who's self-employed.
It's actually not horrible, but I'm interested in how my 2018 liability will change from my 2017 liability, given the new tax plan.
Sure. Yeah.
Things.
Yeah. Always fun. My final couple wrap-up questions I'm going to throw your way. Here we go. First, looking at the rest of this year, where might anybody bump into you in person? Are you getting out of town at all?
Sure. I'll be at LoopConf coming up in a week and a half or so.
Oh, right.
I will be at the VIP workshop in May for those that are doing enterprise WordPress stuff and might be attending that.
Cool.
And then I might be going to WordCamp Europe, but I'm not sure. And same thing with WordCamp US.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to come visit me in Tualatin, more than welcome to.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. Yeah. Where's the VIP workshop taking place?
That's in Sonoma, California.
Oh, okay.
If you have an excuse to attend, you should find an excuse. I'll share you can include it in the show notes. I'll share an Instagram link.
All right.
From last year. So it's at this Carneros Resort where you get a little cabana. You want to just click through on that Instagram link?
Oh, yeah.
And in each cabana, they have an outdoor rainwater. Well, it's like outdoor shower.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
It's pretty deluxe. It's more, it's kind of interesting because like in the WordPress space, our expectations are, $40 WordCamp ticket or, this is very much what you might get with other industry events, which is, pretty luxurious, reason to, corporate expenditure, that sort of thing. So,
of course. Yeah. Wow. That is great. Okay. Thanks for sharing.
TMI.
Yeah. No. I like that. I'm always looking at that kind of stuff and helping coordinate travel for our whole team. And seeing who wants to go.
Well, I'd say it's probably more than you want to spend because it's Bay Area, but certainly there's other kind of resort communities that you can get. Like a big thing is any sort of ski area. Off season, all of those very nice hotel rooms are available at a substantial discount. So like Utah, Colorado, that sort of thing. Good place for deals.
Totally. Do you have any good suggestions of guests to have on the show in the future?
Have you had Joe Hoyle?
Joe Hoyle? No.
He was Brian's former co-host on.
Right. Yeah, CTO he was made. No.
Yeah. He's a good guy. I like talking to him always.
I like it as well. Yeah, he'd be a great guest.
Yeah, he's who comes to mind first, but I'll let you know if I think of anyone else.
Yeah. I don't think I've gotten anybody like from the UK human-made contingent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's more technical, certainly. You could also get Tom Wilmot or anyone from human-made, too.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. All right. Yeah, thanks for the good suggestions.
Sure.
And before we part, you want to share how people can follow you and learn more about the projects that you're on?
So I deleted my Twitter account, and I deleted my Facebook account,
cool.
and I deleted my LinkedIn account,
Oh,
all
my goodness.
because I find their business models morally reprehensible. So you can follow my website, aka blog, danielbachhuber.com, or you can just email me if you want to chat.
Follow your GitHub profile, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's interesting though. if that's, and like the GitHub dashboard, I'd love for it to be good, but it's not really, it's not something that I go to every day to like look at what other people are doing or whatever. So
no, it's not.
I don't recommend following me on GitHub. You should. I do blog regularly, so if you want to follow me, boot up the old RSS reader, wipe the dust off of it, and use that to follow.
Sure thing. Okay, well, thanks for joining me on the show, Daniel. I really appreciate your time. Great conversation, a lot of good wisdom shared, and I wish you all the best. And I hope your tax meeting goes really well.
Hey, me too. Thanks so much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.